You know what? I was going to open this with some kind of baseball pun or joke or reference, but nah. I'm throwing this together in pretty short order. It is the week before Christmas, and I don't even really have the time or the patience to do full makeup. You get a bit of lip gloss, and that's it, Disney. Let's go. Here we are again. It was not that long ago where I was talking about Disney pulling an episode of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur for having trans in sports content. I did a whole video, check it out there. I'm not going to be reiterating too much of that except to note that we've now had it happen twice, and this time for something that isn't even out yet, but we still know that it is happening. Oh, this is so exhausting. And I initially thought I was going to put together like a short for this. I have too many thoughts, though. I have too many thoughts and too much frustration that I would like to clear out of my system. So if you weren't already aware, there is an upcoming show done by Pixar coming out next year called Win or Lose. It is about a Coed baseball team, and the gimmick of it is going to be each episode has a focus on a different character. So everyone gets a focus episode. I think I actually saw somewhere that it's doing a little bit of a Rashomon thing where it's like it's covering the same events, but from different perspectives every time, or like with a focus on what happened to this person leading up to things or things like that. That's my impression. I only knew so much about it before all this went down. It's not the kind of thing I really care about. I've never really been as hot on Pixar as a lot of people, especially my age, have been, and baseball's definitely not my thing. So I was already planning to skip this. But we found out, thanks to a Hollywood Reporter article, that there was going to be an episode focusing on a transgender member of that team. And that episode is being pulled. Now, as I said, this is second time in pretty quick succession, at least in terms of when we're finding out about it, because the Moon Girl thing, that was pretty dang recent, at least in terms of when the news broke. So, a couple things about this that do differentiate it from Moon Girl, at least as it stands at time of recording. In the case of the Moon Girl episode, a big part of why that became a main news item is that the episode actually leaked because it was finished, like 100% done, and it leaked. Whereas this, we actually don't know how far it got. There may not be enough of a watchable product for it to ever leak as something. If there is, I hope it does. But we don't know if that's the case. We don't know if they had a finished episode. We do know that it was scrapped after some notable work was done on it. Now, this was something I also talked about in the Moon Girl episode. There is a really massive increase in frustration that I have towards Disney for doing something like this when they aren't just spiking the idea early. Like if somebody made a pitch to do an episode focusing on a transgender character and that pitch got shut down, that's frustrating and I'm not happy about it, but that at least respects the time of the people involved. Because at minimum what happened was there was a script and the voice recording was done. And we know that is the case because the voice actress for the character, Chanel Stewart, has talked about it and talked about recording that episode. So we know it was at least pitched, written, and the voice acting was done. Hey folks, it's Vera from The Edit, and well, something has leaked. Nothing quite as juicy as the Moon Girl episode because it's not a full thing. It's actually a storyboard. It's actually a very rough storyboard because there's no sound, there's no voice, and it's paced in a way that seems to indicate that it's not designed to fit around sound or voice. So this was probably being done just before or around the same time as the voice recording was happening. This is the kind of very rough thing to get a general idea so that once you have things like the voices and you can start plugging that in, you start really narrowing and nailing things down. This appears to be a little bit something of a montage, and we can, even from just the visuals, tell a few things, such as it is seeming to want to communicate the sense of dysphoria that this character has. The character's name is Kai, and we see her sort of grapple with these little moments. The storyboard is only like 2 minutes and a bit, so it's just one sequence. Whether or not we ever see anything more substantive than this actually leak out, I don't know. With my luck, it'll happen between when I finish editing this and when I release it. But yeah, we now have a sense of it, and it seems to be trying to communicate in a visual, clear way that a younger audience could understand what it feels like to have a sense of dysphoria and feel out of sorts with your own body. And it even looks like it might have been done pretty well. But anyway, back to the rant. Now, there's another really interesting distinction if we're going to compare this to Moon Girl, because the excuse given for why the Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur episode was given was very distinctly, we're not displaying an issue with the character who is trans. And to be fair, the trans character in that show was an existing character, had been introduced in the previous season. So it's not like their presence was new. And what Disney appeared to be fleeing from was specifically the debate of transgender athletes, which, while it shouldn't be, is, I do have to admit, a massive political issue right now. It probably wasn't when they first started working on that Moon Girl episode, but it definitely is now. So the excuse that time was that we don't want to step into this specific political issue. Not that the character is trans, but this specific, very politicized issue of trans people, trans girls generally, in sports. And that is BS and that is nonsense, but I can't deny that that is a political landmine to step on. I do have to grant them that. Now, you might find yourself thinking, oh, well, okay, it's the same thing here, right? Because, like, it's a baseball team this time. Yeah, funny thing about that, you may or may not have heard me use the term Coed when I described this show. It's a Coed team. So this isn't a girls' team with a trans girl on it where there's going to be an issue of, oh, is this really a boy? Should she be here? No, it's already a mixed gender team. So that's actually not even an issue in the episode. And as a result, Disney has had to make a new excuse. And while I called a certain amount of BS on the excuse given for Moon Girl, this one is beyond pathetic. According to a Disney spokesperson, when it comes to animated content for a younger audience, we recognize that many parents would prefer to discuss certain subjects with their children on their own terms and timelines. Really, Disney? You're not going to allow the confirmed existence of a transgender character in the show because trans people existing at all is something that really is just a conversation for parents to have with their kids. We don't want to invade on that. Here's the thing about their wording, though. That is an excuse that could be applied to literally anything. Here at Sesame Street, we've made the determination that the ABCs is really something that parents should address with their children on their own terms and timeline, and therefore we will not be teaching the alphabet any further. And here's the kicker, there's a really good chance that if they're trying to hide the fact that a character is trans, it's going to be really obvious that something is off, because as I said, part of the premise of this is that every character gets a highlight episode. So far as I'm aware, they are not removing this character from the entire story. They're just removing the focus episode. So the episode that was going to focus on her is going to be gone, but the character's still going to be there, which means that in a format where every character gets a focus episode, there's going to be a rather odd omission. Is that how you intend it to come up between parents and their children when the kids go, why didn't she get talked about? Why didn't she get a focus episode? Everybody else did. And just to avoid speculation, there's zero evidence that a new episode was being produced to focus on this character in place of the cut one. The voice actress probably would have mentioned if she'd been brought back in to do that. I'm being a little bit facetious on that, but how can I not be? This is the most ridiculous excuse ever, and it is so cowardly. I called Disney cowards when I talked about the Moon Girl thing, but this is a new level of cowardice. Because, look, if Disney had put out a statement that said, we feel that this is a topic that is inappropriate for children, that would have been an actual principled stance to take. It would have been wrong. Don't misunderstand me. but it would have actually indicated a set of principles that they're acting upon. We don't think that discussions or acknowledging the existence of transgender people is appropriate. But they can't say that. Well, they could, but they're not going to say that because that is going to massively piss off all the, not just transgender people, but their loved ones, their allies, people who think that transgender people are, human beings whose existence is not a big freaking deal. They're going to go, I'm sorry, did you just say that it's inappropriate for children to know that trans people exist at all? Now, of course, that is the position of much of the right, but that's not a position that Disney can safely take, and they know that. So they took the coward's position of like, oh, well, we just parents. We'll have the parents. Here's another thing about that, Disney. If you actually care about the terms and the timeline that most parents will take to discuss transgender issues with their kids is never. They will never do it. So you can word it as if, oh, well, we'll leave it to parents so they can talk to their children about it when they feel it's age appropriate. Many, many parents simply never will. And if you actually care, and I know you don't, but if you actually care about the well-being and the lessons learned by children, finding out that a certain kind of person exists, that's a good thing to know because eventually they're going to encounter queer people in the world. It's just the flimsiest, most ridiculous excuse that I've seen come from a corporation in a long time. And as I said, Disney are being cowards, but more than just being cowards, honestly, I think this is also just about the worst way that they could have dealt with this. So let's take the actual morals out of it for a second. Let's set aside for the moment the fact that, trans people exist, including trans youth, and that their existence is a fact of life and their existence should not be political. Because again, even if you are capitulating to the fact that trans kids in sports is a political issue, it shouldn't be, but it is. I do have to admit to that reality. Trans people existing at all really shouldn't be a political issue. And if you have allowed it to become one, then you are validating some real questionable stuff. And it's stuff that Disney, regardless of the actual opinions of its board, or, the CEO or whatever else, it's a position that Disney can't really take. And I'm not even sure they would want to. But this is what I mean when I say I think this is the worst position they could have taken. So let's strip the morals out of it. Let's be cold, calculating corporations. Let's be amoral entities for a little bit. Strictly speaking, this is obviously a rollback and a reaction to an overall cultural shift. Now, as with Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, the official word that we've gotten is that this decision was made prior to the election. While that is actually completely confirmable with Moon Girl, and again, I talked in that video why we know for a fact that that is actually true. It's less confirmable here. That might be true. It's a little less certain, but regardless, there is an overall shift that they are trying to make as they are witnessing, they believe, a shift in the culture. Now, here's the thing. Disney can only shift so far because their whole thing is appealing to the biggest, broadest, mass appeal demographics as they possibly can. Disney's ideal world is one in which their works appeal to almost everybody. The problem is that we currently exist in a time of such extreme political polarization, particularly where people's very existences have become massively politicized in a massively polarized way that you kind of can't appeal to everybody. You can't appeal to queer people and their allies by acknowledging them through representation and also appeal to people who think trans people are predatory men who are trying to indoctrinate and or harm children. Those are incompatible audiences if you are trying to appeal to them. But if Disney is trying to avoid all of the accusations of them being woke and everything else, this isn't gonna help. Because I am going to reject anybody who's saying they're trying to actually appeal to the right. They're not. They're making a very short-sighted thing. What are they actually going to gain by pulling episodes like this and the one in Moon Girl? Do they actually think that those on the right who have made Disney a punching bag for decades now are going to stop doing that? Because they're not just mad about trans people. They are mad at the existence of The Acolyte, at the existence of Finn in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, at the existence of Captain Marvel. They are mad basically any time that a non-white, male, non-disabled, cis-het character appears, honestly at all, but especially if they are featured as a primary character. And Disney, no matter how much they try and backpedal, they can't actually strip all of that out, because the only way to actually satisfy the anti-woke crowd, because yes, they will claim stuff like this as a win for their side, but they're not going to stop going after Disney. The only thing that would make them stop going after Disney is a purging of all diversity. Disney can't do that. Not only too much of their established IP, but too much of their audience base actually likes that. So you can't actually appeal to the anti-woke crowd as an audience by just scrapping some trans-related stuff, because they don't like you for a whole lot more. And it's too core to what you have built for you to be able to extract that without losing way more audience than you would ever gain. So again, if we're thinking in terms of being cold, calculating, amoral corporations, yes, maybe we don't do any further transgender related stuff because it is just going to, put us in headlines. They're looking at the incoming president and going, we really don't need him to be dropping our name derogatorily in press conferences and whatnot. Like, no corporation actively wants that going on. And yeah, if you did transgender representation, yeah, that is the kind of thing that is going to happen. So I can understand, again, cold calculated amoral corporations thinking, I can't understand not tackling transgender issues in the future. But this and the Moon Girl thing of rolling back representation that you actually initially approved and we have now found out about, that you should have just let it ride. Because while you would have gotten yelled at by the same people who are going to keep yelling at you regardless, while you were going to get yelled at by them when this stuff aired, once that was done, you could just stop doing it. And that would be not a massive win-win for you, but a mild one. Because yeah, people like me would notice, hey, you started doing that and you stopped. And, it would be BS, but you could make a corporate excuse of like, well, we haven't had any new stories along those lines that we have had the desire to tell. We're telling other stories right now. And it would be nonsense, but it would at least be plausibly deniable. Plus, they could gesture at the trans stuff they actually let air, if they did let this stuff air, and go, no, see, we do support you. We released those things. We just haven't done anything new in a little bit. That would have been the best thing for them to do. But they're thinking too short term. And as a result, they now are going to have everybody ticked at them. Because as I said, the anti-woke crowd is not going to get off their rear end because of this. And now, any trans people, queer people, their friends, their loved ones, their allies, now we're ticked at you. And look, I know there's plenty of people who are going to go, it's Disney. Were you expecting them not to do this? No, look, I have no actual expectations of Disney, but I do feel this is worth pointing out and dissecting and pulling apart, because this isn't just a matter of they're not representing us or they're representing us badly. This is an actual regression. Disney has not been great with diversity. Never has. But it's been pretty rare for things to actually roll back. What's been infuriating has been very slow or very stagnant process. I mean, it's a meme at this point. The multiple times Disney has tried to claim, our first gay whatever. Like, they've done it so many times, it's a joke. And you could argue that is pretty stagnant, but at least they are still there. holding steady, if not slowly, painfully, way too damn late, crawling forward. This is an active rollback. And I want people to remember that when Pride Month rolls along and they are shilling their rainbow merch. And in the past, I don't want to say like defended or encouraged people to buy that stuff, but I have kind of said people go in a little too hard because the existence of that is kind of a good indication, because it means that their merchandising, their marketing does think that's a demographic worth appealing to. They think that we matter enough and are not going to go away that they want to include us at least a little bit. That's the argument I've made in the past. I'm not going to make that argument right now because right now they're actively rolling back, but they're still going to try and get our money. Is this me leading into a call for a boycott? No. Entertainment boycotts don't work. Not against entities of this size, at any rate. You will never get enough people to actually follow through on, canceling their Disney Plus subscriptions, on, not going to Disney related stuff, canceling trips to the theme park. You will never get enough people to agree to and then actually follow through with that for it to ever make a dent. So no, I'm not calling for that. I am currently in the process of figuring out how I want to word a notice at the front of Disney-related properties, kind of similar to the one I have about the BBC in front of my Doctor Who stuff. I am trying to figure out how I might want to do that, because it's the removal, it's the rollback that really, really, really upsets me. Because this isn't me getting upset like, you haven't represented us, how dare you? No, you were going to. You were. This isn't just a matter of you haven't given me a thing. No, this is a matter of you were going to give me a thing. You held it out and then went, never mind. Because I'm not going to say this is the case for everybody. Some people do get a little bit demanding about representation. I don't demand that you represent me. I don't. I don't demand that you represent people like me. Am I happy when I see it? Yeah, absolutely. 100%. But you don't have to do it. I won't generally hold that against you. But if you move forward with the idea of representing someone like me, and then you backtrack on it, that feels a little bit more personal. Because that feels like you thought about it and were like, yeah, maybe you're worth something. Never mind. I'd rather you just not try and appeal to me at all. So, on that note, Disney, discontinue your rainbow merch line. I mean it. Don't claim to care. Don't claim to be allies. Just don't. You're not. And you're not required to be. You don't have to be queer allies. No corporation does. You don't have to. Stop trying to get our money. That is where I do get actively angry. Because you don't have to, stand by my side in a fight that shouldn't have to happen. Like, queer people shouldn't have to fight for the recognition of their existence. Unfortunately, they do. I don't demand that you stand beside me in that. But if you're not going to, you're going to make active choices to be as far away from possibly having to make a stand as you can possibly get, don't try and get my money on the basis of supporting me, because you don't. I used to actually have a couple of pieces of Rainbow Disney merch. I didn't buy them. I actually got them as part of a sponsored segment that I ended up doing a couple of years back. That stuff got sent to me. I wasn't sponsored by Disney. It was a different thing. But I had a snow globe and I had a shirt. Actually, you can look back, I think, at some shorts, maybe even some full videos where I wore this shirt. It was rainbow pattern on the wording. Ohana means family. I got rid of that. I got rid of that back during the Don't Say Gay bill debacle. But I got rid of that and I gave away the snow globe. Because I am not prepared. Like I said, I'm not calling for a boycott, nor am I suddenly going to get rid of all my Disney-related stuff, nor am I going to stop covering Disney stuff in the future, at least at present. But the idea of having that open hypocrisy in my house, that I did find offensive. Disney, you don't have to appeal to me. But if you're not going to, and you're going to actively distance yourself from anybody who's like me, don't ask for my money. You have no business asking for it on the basis of allyship, the basis of supporting queer people, celebrating queer people. Because you don't. You don't do it. You've pulled episodes. You had your higher-ups request the removal of anything that could possibly be construed as being too gay from Inside Out 2, even though the end result still kind of felt a little bit gay. I don't care that you don't support me. I care that you actively try to appeal to my wallet on the basis of the lie that you support me. Screw you for that. And screw Bob Iger, who, as a reminder, has laid out the notion that Disney has been, quote unquote, too focused on the message of late. And yeah, I'm sure this is considered part of that new philosophy and new mandate. And my existence is not a message. Trans people existing is not a message. It is a fact of life. A fact of life that you are not only choosing to not represent, you are actively erasing. I find the notion that my existence is viewed as a message to be very, very telling. So, Mr. Iger?
Eat shit, Bob!
Thank you, Mr. Nutter Butter. That'll do nicely. Yeah, as I said, I had too many thoughts on this. And I'm throwing this together relatively quickly. And the week before Christmas, I hope everybody has a lovely holiday. Whether you celebrate it or not, have a lovely week. You know, Merry Christmas, Blessed Solstice, Happy Yule, Happy Holidays. Whatever it might be. Or just take care of yourself. If nothing else, try and do that. Thanks for sticking through this with me. And yeah. I got to pack. I got stuff to do. Thank you very much for watching. Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't support me that way, like and share and subscribe. Those will help as well. But what I really want you to remember is that no matter what representation is pulled, removed, or refused to be acknowledged about you, you are beautiful. You are valid. You are loved. You are the council, and I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. And now it's time to thank my highest supporting patrons. Robin Moore, Goddess Elida, Zubin Lutfulla, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Oliver B., Melissa Pedersen, Movie Turtle, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Melinda Walters, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Renabulax the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Quite Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Adam RDL Taylor, Pal Barabajoggle, Mira G, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. You can hear me try and say your name while dealing with these guys crawling all over me by checking out the reward tiers on my Patreon. See you next time.